The shuttle doors opened, and Ambassador Marcus Cole stepped onto Nexus Station for the first time. The air smelled strange, like metal and something sweet he could not name. All around him, aliens of every shape and size moved through the massive corridors. Some had scales. Some had too many eyes. Some floated instead of walked. None of them looked happy to see a human. Marcus was 53 years old with gray hair and calm brown eyes. He wore a simple black suit with no medals or decorations. He carried nothing but a small bag with water and a change of clothes. To anyone watching, he looked like the most ordinary man in the universe. But Marcus was not ordinary. He had spent 30 years as a hostage negotiator in Chicago. He had talked armed men out of banks. He had convinced desperate people to put down weapons and walk away. He had sat across from killers and never blinked. The United Earth Council had chosen him for this mission, not because he was brave or smart, but because he possessed something rare. Marcus Cole could wait. He could sit in perfect stillness while chaos exploded around him. He could watch and listen and never show fear, even when fear was eating him alive inside. Today, humanity needed that skill more than ever. The Galactic Tribunal had summoned Earth to answer for crimes against the galaxy. 12 species had signed the complaint. They accused humanity of expanding too fast, taking resources that did not belong to them, and being a threat to galactic peace. The punishment, if humanity was found guilty, would be severe. Some species wanted Earth destroyed. Others wanted humans enslaved. All of them wanted humanity to kneel and beg for mercy. Marcus had read the charges. He knew they were mostly lies. Humanity had followed every rule, signed every treaty, and never fired first in any conflict. But the truth did not matter here. This trial was not about justice. It was about fear. The galaxy had watched humans go from primitive creatures to spacefaring civilization in less than 200 years. That terrified them. They wanted to crush humanity before humans became too powerful to stop. 2 armed guards led Marcus through the station to the tribunal chamber. They were Vectari, tall insect-like creatures with black shells and clicking mandibles. They did not speak to him. They did not even look at him. Marcus was beneath their notice. Just another primitive creature about to be judged and found wanting. The tribunal chamber was enormous. It was built from some kind of crystal that caught the light and threw rainbows across every surface. 12 elevated platforms surrounded a small circle in the center where the accused was meant to stand. Each platform held a delegation from a different species. Marcus counted hundreds of aliens watching him as he entered. The room fell silent. High Prosecutor Vexler stood on the tallest platform. He was ancient even by Vecti standards, his shell scarred from 100 battles. He had prosecuted cases for over 300 years and never lost. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "The accused will stand in the circle and face judgment," Vexler announced. Marcus walked to the center of the room. Every eye in the chamber followed him. He could feel their hatred, their fear, their contempt. They expected him to tremble. They expected him to beg. They expected a show of weakness that would justify everything they planned to do. Marcus looked around the room slowly. He met the eyes of every delegation, one by one. Then he did something that no accused had ever done in the history of the Galactic Tribunal. He sat down. There was a chair in the circle, meant for defendants who could not stand. Marcus settled into it, folded his hands in his lap, and closed his mouth. He did not speak. He did not defend himself. He simply sat there and watched. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. Then 20. Then a full minute. Vexler's mandibles clicked with irritation. "The accused will stand and answer the charges." Marcus did not move. His eyes found Vexler and held them. He breathed slowly and evenly, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. Nothing else about him moved at all. "Human," Vexler said, his voice rising. "You will show respect to this tribunal. You will stand and answer for the crimes of your species." Marcus said nothing. He did not blink. He did not shift in his seat. He watched Vexler the way a cat watches a mouse. With complete and total focus, something strange began to happen in the chamber. The delegates started to shift in their seats. The Maraudi, a species of empaths with pale skin and large dark eyes, pressed their hands to their temples. The Scythians, who looked almost like tall blue humans, began whispering to each other. Even the Vectari guards behind Marcus took a small step backward. A young Scythian diplomat named Kiravel felt her hearts begin to race. She did not understand why. The human was not doing anything. He was just sitting there. But something about his stillness made her want to run. It was like standing in a forest and suddenly realizing you were being watched by something with very sharp teeth. Vexter tried again. "This is your final warning, human. Stand and speak, or you will be found guilty by default." Marcus tilted his head slightly to the left. It was a tiny movement, barely noticeable. But Vexter flinched, as if Marcus had raised a weapon. The chamber erupted in confused murmuring. Delegates demanded to know what was happening. Guards gripped their weapons tighter. The Maraudi empath in the third row stood up and left the chamber entirely, his face pale with terror. Kiravel could not look away from the human. She had studied Earth before this trial. She knew humans were predators, that their eyes faced forward like hunters instead of to the sides like prey. She knew they had once chased animals across vast plains until the animals collapsed from fear and exhaustion. She knew they could go days without sleep when they were focused on something. But knowing these things and feeling them were very different experiences. The human was not threatening anyone. He was not speaking or moving or doing anything aggressive. He was simply watching. And somehow, that was the most terrifying thing Kiravel had ever experienced. It was like being trapped in a small room with a creature that had all the time in the universe to decide what to do with you. Vexter slammed his forelimb against his podium. "Speak, human. What game are you playing?" Marcus let 5 more seconds pass. Then he opened his mouth and said 2 words in a voice so quiet that everyone had to strain to hear. "I'm listening." The chamber went completely silent. Kiravel saw Vexter's shell begin to rattle, a sign of extreme stress in his species. The great prosecutor, who had never lost a case, took another step backward. And his mandibles would not stop clicking. The human closed his mouth and resumed his silence. His eyes never left Vexter. He did not look angry or scared or smug. He looked patient. He looked like someone who could sit in that chair for 1,000 years without moving. And somewhere deep in her mind, in the ancient part that remembered what it meant to be prey, Kiravel understood something terrible. The human was not the one on trial. They were 6. Hours had passed since the trial began. 6 hours of testimony, accusations, and evidence presented against humanity. 6 hours of delegates speaking about human aggression, human expansion, human danger. And through all of it, Ambassador Marcus Cole had not moved from his chair. He had not eaten. He had not asked for water. He had not requested a break or a bathroom visit. He simply sat there with his hands folded in his lap, watching everything with those calm brown eyes. Every witness who took the stand found themselves unable to look at him for more than a few seconds. Every prosecutor who made an accusation felt their voice grow weaker under his steady gaze. Hi, Prosecutor Vexter had tried everything. He had shouted. He had threatened. He had presented evidence that should have made any defendant angry enough to respond. Nothing worked. The human just sat there, breathing slowly. Watching in the observation gallery above the main chamber, Kiravel had been watching the human for the entire 6 hours. She had not eaten either. She could not look away. Something about Marcus Cole fascinated and terrified her in equal measure, her assistant. A young Scythian named Talvin approached her with a datapad. "I found what you asked for," he said quietly. "Information about human evolution and hunting behavior." Kiravel took the pad and began to read. What she found made her blood run cold. Humans were what Earth scientists called persistence predators. Unlike most hunting species that relied on speed or strength or venom, humans had evolved a different strategy. They would pick a target and follow it, not chase it. Follow it. They would walk after their prey for hours, sometimes days, never attacking, never rushing. They would just keep coming, always visible, always watching. the prey would run. Humans could not match the speed of most Earth animals, so the prey would escape easily at first. But then it would stop to rest, and the human would appear again, still walking, still following, so the prey would run again. And again, and again, eventually the prey would collapse. Not from injury, but from exhaustion and terror. Its heart would give out from the stress of being hunted by something that never stopped, never tired, and never looked away. The human would walk up to its fallen prey and finish it without ever having to fight at all. Kiravel looked down at Marcus Cole and felt her heart skip. That was what he was doing. He was not fighting. He was not running. He was following. He was letting them exhaust themselves with accusations and evidence and threats, while he simply waited. He was hunting them with patience. Down in the chamber, Vexter was presenting a new witness. This was a Korath trader, a small furry creature with 6 arms, who claimed that humans had stolen shipping routes from his people. "Tell the tribunal what happened," Vexter commanded. The Korath began to speak, but his eyes kept drifting to the human in the chair. Marcus had turned his head slightly to look at the witness. Just looked. Nothing more. But the Korath's voice began to shake. The humans. They came to our sector, and the Korath stopped. He was trembling now. Why is he staring at me? "Ignore the defendant," Vexter said. "Continue your testimony." "I cannot," the Korath whispered. "He will not stop looking at me." Why will he not stop? Marcus did nothing. He did not smile or frown or speak. He just watched the Korath with complete attention, as if the small alien was the most interesting thing in the universe. The Korath fled the witness stand and did not return. After 8 hours, the tribunal called a recess. Delegates rushed out of the chamber like they were escaping a fire. Vexter remained at his podium, his shell rattling continuously. He had never felt fear like this before. The human had done nothing, and somehow that was worse than any attack. Marcus finally stood up. He stretched his arms above his head and rolled his neck from side to side. Then he walked calmly toward the exit. Nodding politely to the guards who scrambled to get out of his way, Kiravel made a decision. She hurried down from the observation gallery and intercepted Marcus in the hallway outside the chamber. "Ambassador Cole," she said. Marcus stopped and looked at her. Up close, she could see the lines on his face, the gray in his hair, the calm steadiness in his eyes. He did not look like a monster. He looked like someone's grandfather. But when he focused on her, Kiravel felt the same chill that every other alien in the chamber had felt. "Yes," Marcus said. His voice was soft and pleasant. "What are you doing?" Kiravel asked. "Why will you not speak? Why do you just sit there?" Marcus smiled slightly. "I am listening. You've said that before." "What does it mean?" "It means exactly what it sounds like," Marcus said. "I am listening to everyone in that room. I am watching how they move, how they speak, how they look at each other. I am learning." Kiravel felt a tremor run through her body. "Learning what? Who is telling the truth? Who is lying? Who is afraid? Who is dangerous?" Marcus paused. "And who might be worth talking to when this is over?" "You are scaring everyone," Kiravel said. The Marathi empath had to be sedated. 3 delegates have requested to leave the station. Even Vexter is showing signs of severe stress. "I have not threatened anyone," Marcus said calmly. "I have not raised my voice or made any aggressive moves. I have simply been paying attention." "That is what makes it terrifying," Kiravel whispered. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Kiravel forced herself not to look away, though every instinct screamed at her to run. "You are different," Marcus said finally. "You are scared, but you came to talk to me anyway." "Why?" Kiravel swallowed hard. "Because I want to understand. My people have never encountered a species like yours. We do not know what you want or what you will do. What we want is simple," Marcus said. "We want to be left alone to grow and explore and build. We did not ask for this trial. We did not ask to be threatened with extinction. We came here because you summoned us." He leaned slightly closer. "But since we are here, I intend to learn everything I can about the species that want to destroy us. Because when this trial is over, One way or another, humanity will remember who stood against us. And we are very, very good at remembering. He straightened up and smiled again. It was a warm smile, the kind a teacher might give a struggling student. You should get some rest, Marcus said. Tomorrow will be interesting. He walked away, leaving Kiravel standing alone in the hallway. She watched him go and realized her hands were shaking. The human had still not made a single threat. He had not mentioned weapons or war or revenge. He had simply said that humans were good at remembering. And somehow, that was the most frightening thing anyone had ever said to her. She returned to her quarters but could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus Cole sitting in that chair, watching, waiting, learning. She saw millions of humans on Earth, all of them with those forward-facing predator eyes, all of them patient enough to wait for centuries, if necessary. The galaxy had put humanity on trial to show them their place. Kiravel was beginning to suspect that they had made a terrible mistake by the third day. Word had spread across Nexus Station. The human who would not speak, the human who just sat there, the human who made hardened prosecutors tremble with nothing but his eyes. Aliens whispered about him in corridors and trading halls. Some said he was a military weapon disguised as a diplomat. Others claimed he possessed psychic powers that let him project fear into the minds of his enemies. A few even suggested that humans had evolved beyond the need for words and could communicate through silence alone. None of these things were true. Marcus Cole was just a man who understood something that most species had forgotten. Silence was power. Patience was a weapon. And the creature willing to wait the longest usually won. The tribunal chamber was half empty when the third day began. For delegations had withdrawn from the proceedings entirely. Their representatives had fled the station on emergency shuttles, claiming illness or urgent business at home. Everyone knew the real reason. They could not bear another day under the human's gaze. High Prosecutor Vexler looked exhausted. His shell had lost its shine, and his movements were slow and jerky. He had not slept in 2 days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the human watching him. Marcus sat in his chair as always, calm and still and patient. He had eaten breakfast that morning, a simple meal of bread and fruit from the station's human-compatible kitchens. He had slept for exactly 6 hours. He was rested and alert and ready for whatever came next. Vexler called his next witness, a Maraudi named Selvik, who was considered the most powerful empath in the galaxy. The Maraudi could read emotions from across a room, sense intentions before they became actions, and detect lies with perfect accuracy. Vexler was counting on Selvik to finally break through the human's wall of silence. Selvik entered the chamber and immediately turned pale. He was a tall, thin creature with gray skin and enormous black eyes. Those eyes locked onto Marcus Cole and did not look away. "Read him," Vexler commanded. "Tell the tribunal what the human is feeling. Tell us what he is planning." Selvik raised his hands and reached out with his empathic senses. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his face twisted into an expression of pure horror. "What do you sense?" Vexler demanded. "Nothing," Selvik whispered. "I sense nothing." "That is impossible. Every sentient being has emotions. You do not understand." Selvik's voice was shaking. "It is not that he has no emotions. It is that he has complete control over them. His mind is like a still pond. On the surface, there is perfect calm. But underneath," trailed off, his black eyes wide with fear. "Underneath what?" Vexler pressed. "There is something beneath the surface," Selvik said. "Something vast and old and patient. It is watching me right now. It is watching all of us. And it is waiting for something. Waiting for what?" Selvik turned to look at Vexler. For us to make a mistake, the chamber erupted in frightened murmuring. Several more delegates stood up and left. Selvik did not wait to be dismissed. He fled the chamber at a dead run, knocking over chairs in his haste to escape. Marcus had not moved during the entire exchange. He simply watched Selvik run away with the same calm expression he'd worn since the trial began. Kiravel watched from the observation gallery, her heart's pounding. She had spent the previous night researching human history, and what she had found only deepened her fear. Humans had not always been the dominant species on their planet. For millions of years, they had been prey for larger, stronger, faster animals. They had survived not through strength, but through cooperation, intelligence, and patience. They had learned to wait in the tall grass while predators passed. They had learned to track animals for days without rest. They had learned that the creature who panicked first usually died first. That knowledge was encoded in every human cell. It was why Marcus could sit still for hours without twitching. It was why his heartbeat remained steady, even when surrounded by hostile aliens. His ancestors had spent millions of years being hunted, and they had responded by becoming the most patient hunters the universe had ever seen. Vexthor was desperate now. He called witness after witness, but each one crumbled under Marcus's gaze. A Korath military commander forgot his testimony mid-sentence. A Vectari scientist's hands shook so badly that she dropped her evidence 3 times. A Scythian politician burst into tears and had to be escorted from the chamber. Finally, Vexthor could take no more. He slammed his forelimb against his podium and pointed at Marcus. "Speak!" he screamed. "Say something. Defend yourself. Attack us. Do anything except sit there and watch." Marcus considered the request for a moment. Then he nodded slowly and rose to his feet. The chamber fell absolutely silent. Every remaining delegate leaned forward, desperate to finally hear what the human would say. "You want me to speak?" Marcus said. His voice was calm and steady, neither loud nor soft. "Very well. I will speak." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each delegation in turn. "I have been sitting in this chair for 3 days. I have listened to your accusations. I have watched your witnesses. I have studied every one of you." He paused. "And I have learned a great deal." "What have you learned?" Vexthor demanded, his voice cracking. "I have learned that this trial has nothing to do with justice," Marcus said. "Humanity has broken no laws. We have followed every treaty, respected every border, and never fired the first shot in any conflict. You know this. Your own evidence proves it. Then why are we here?" Someone shouted from the delegations. Marcus smiled. It was not a threatening smile. It was sad, almost pitying. "You are here because you are afraid," he said. "You watched humanity rise from nothing to spacefaring civilization in the blink of an eye. You saw us spread across the stars faster than any species in galactic history, and you realized something that terrified you." He paused and let the silence stretch. "You realized that you cannot stop us. Not with laws, not with threats, not with trials. Humanity will keep growing, keep expanding, keep learning, and nothing you do will change that." Vexthor's shell was rattling so hard that it sounded like rain on a metal roof. "Is that a threat?" "No," Marcus said simply. "It is a fact. Humans do not make threats. We make promises. And I promise you this." He looked directly at Vexthor. "When I sit back down, I am going to keep watching. I am going to keep learning. And when I finally stand up for the last time, I am going to tell you exactly what humanity wants from this galaxy." He lowered himself back into his chair and folded his hands. "The question is," Marcus said quietly, "will you still be here to listen? Or will you run like all the others?" Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The chamber was frozen in perfect, terrified silence. And Marcus Cole sat in his chair and watched them, patient as a stone, calm as a still pond with something vast, and hungry, waiting underneath. The 4th day of the trial began with only 5 delegations remaining. 7 species had fled Nexus Station entirely, their ships jumping to faster-than-light speed the moment they cleared the docking bays. They had not even bothered to formally withdraw from the proceedings. They had simply run. High Prosecutor Vexthor stood alone on his platform. His assistants had refused to return to the chamber. His guards had requested reassignment to other duties. Even his fellow Vectari had begun to avoid him, as if his contact with the human had infected him with some kind of disease. Marcus Cole sat in his chair, same as always. He had smiled at Vexthor when he entered the chamber that morning, a small, polite smile that had nearly sent the prosecutor running to join the others, who had fled. Kiravel was one of the 5 who remained. She sat in the Scythian delegation box, her hands gripping the armrests of her chair. Every instinct told her to run. Every cell in her body screamed that she was in the presence of a predator and needed to escape. But she forced herself to stay. She wanted to understand. The other remaining delegations were the Tolketh, species of silicon-based beings who felt no fear because they had no emotions. The Vreen, a hive mind collective who were curious rather than afraid. The Marathi High Council, who had sent a new representative after Selvik's breakdown. And the Korath Trading Guild, whose leader was too stubborn to admit defeat. Vexthor called the session to order. His voice was weak, his movements slow. He looked like he had aged 100 years in 4 days. The tribunal will now hear final arguments, he announced. The prosecution rests its case. Does the defense wish to make a statement? Marcus stood up. Every eye in the chamber locked onto him. I do, he said. He walked to the center of the chamber, stepping out of the defendant's circle for the first time. No one tried to stop him. The guards were gone, and Vexthor did not have the strength to object. I have listened to 4 days of testimony, Marcus began. I've heard you call humanity aggressive, dangerous, and uncontrollable. I've heard you describe us as a threat to galactic peace. I have watched you present evidence that you believe proves we are monsters. He paused and looked around the chamber. Now I will tell you the truth about humanity, not the lies you have invented to justify your fear, the actual truth. Marcus began to walk slowly around the chamber, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Humans are predators. This is true. We evolved to hunt, to chase, to kill. Our eyes face forward like hunters. Our bodies are built for endurance rather than speed. We once chased prey across entire continents until they collapsed from exhaustion. He stopped walking and turned to face the remaining delegations. But that is not what makes us dangerous. What makes us dangerous is what we did after we became the dominant species on our planet. What did you do? Kiravel heard herself ask. Her voice was barely above a whisper. We turned our hunting instincts inward, Marcus said. We began hunting ideas instead of animals, problems instead of prey. We became obsessed with understanding, with building, with creating. The same patience that let us track a deer for 3 days now lets us spend decades solving a single equation. The same persistence that let us outlast every predator on our world now lets us pursue scientific breakthroughs until we succeed. He smiled. And this time, there was warmth in it. You think we are monsters because we are patient. You fear us because we are persistent. But you have made a mistake. You have confused our nature with our intent. Marcus walked toward Vexthor's platform. The prosecutor backed away until he hit the wall behind him. Humanity does not want to conquer the galaxy, Marcus said. We have no interest in ruling over species who fear and hate us. We do not dream of empire or domination. These are the fears of prey animals who imagine that predators think as they do. Then what do you want? Vexthor whispered. We want what we have always wanted, Marcus said simply. To learn, to grow, to build, to explore, and yes, to protect ourselves from those who would destroy us. But we do not seek conflict. We do not hunger for war. He turned back to face the remaining delegations. I know why you called this trial. I know why you gathered your evidence and summoned humanity to answer for crimes we did not commit. You hoped to see us grovel. You hoped we would beg for mercy, admit weakness, accept whatever limitations you wished to place upon us.
Ow.
Marcus shook his head slowly.
Out!
That was never going to happen. Humans do not beg. We do not grovel. We do not show our throats to those who threaten us. It is not in our nature. He walked back to the center of the chamber and stood tall. But we also do not hold grudges against those who act from fear rather than malice. I have been watching all of you for 4 days. I know which species truly hate humanity. I know which ones joined this trial out of genuine concern for galactic peace. I know which ones were bullied into participating and which ones led the charge. His eyes found each delegation in turn. The 7 species who fled did so because they knew I would eventually speak, and they were afraid of what I would say. They were right to be afraid. Humanity will remember them. Not with hatred, but with caution. We will watch them. We will be ready if they move against us. We will never fully trust them again. It turned to the 5 remaining delegations. You stayed. You were afraid, but you stayed anyway. That tells me something important about your species. It tells me that you value truth over comfort, that you can face difficult things without running, that you might be worthy of something more than suspicion. Kiravel felt tears forming in her eyes. She did not know why. Perhaps it was relief. Perhaps it was shame. Perhaps it was hope. Humanity did not come here to make enemies, Marcus said. We came here to learn who our enemies might be. And we came here hoping to find something else as well. What? Kiravel asked. Marcus smiled at her, and for the first time there was no predator in his eyes. There was only a tired old man who had spent his life trying to understand others. Friends, he said. We came here hoping to find friends. The chamber was silent. Even Vexler had stopped trembling. Tomorrow, I will tell you what humanity wants from this galaxy, Marcus said. It is not conquest. It is not submission. It is something much simpler and much harder to achieve. He turned and walked back to his chair. But that is for tomorrow. For now, I think we have all had enough revelations for one day. He sat down and closed his eyes. For the first time in 4 days, Marcus Cole was not watching. And somehow, that made the 5 remaining delegations more nervous than ever. The final day of the tribunal arrived with a sense of strange calm. The panic and fear that had filled Nexus Station for nearly a week had faded into something else. Anticipation, curiosity, and for some hope. The chamber was no longer half empty. Word had spread that the human ambassador would finally reveal what humanity wanted from the galaxy. And aliens who had fled were now watching through remote feeds. Millions of beings across hundreds of worlds had tuned in to witness the conclusion of the strangest trial in galactic history. Marcus Cole entered the chamber and did not sit down. He walked to the center and stood there, hands clasped behind his back, looking up at the 5 remaining delegations. He looked different today. The Predator's stillness was still there, but it was softer somehow. Less threatening. More like a guardian than a hunter. High Prosecutor Vexler was present, though he looked like a shadow of his former self. His shell was dull, his posture bent, his voice weak when he called the session to order. This tribunal recognizes the defendant, Vexler said. You may present your final statement. Marcus nodded respectfully. Thank you, Prosecutor. I know this week has been difficult for you. I appreciate your willingness to see it through. Vexler blinked in surprise. He had expected many things from the human, but gratitude was not one of them. 4 days ago, Marcus began, I walked into this chamber as a defendant. My species was accused of crimes against the galaxy. 12 species wanted to see humanity punished, controlled, or destroyed. You brought me here expecting to watch a primitive species beg for mercy. He paused and let his gaze travel across the remaining delegations. Instead, you watched your fellow species flee in terror from a man who did nothing but sit and watch. You saw your most powerful empath break down from trying to read a human mind. You learned that the silence of a patient predator can be more frightening than any weapon. Marcus shook his head slowly, but that was not my intention. I did not come here to terrify anyone. I came here to understand who we were dealing with and to show you something important about humanity. What did you want to show us? Kiravel asked from the Scythian box. That we are not what you feared, Marcus said. You expected monsters. You expected conquerors. You expected a species that would threaten and bluster and demand submission. Instead, you got me. An old man who used to talk to criminals for a living. He smiled slightly. Humans are patient because we had to be. We are persistent because giving up meant death. We are watchful because our ancestors lived in a world where everything wanted to eat them. These traits make us seem terrifying to species who evolve differently. But they do not make us evil. Marcus began to walk slowly around the chamber as he spoke. The 7 species who fled this station will spend years wondering what humanity wants from them. They will build weapons they do not need. They will form alliances against threats that do not exist. They will waste resources preparing for a war that we have no intention of starting. He stopped walking and faced the remaining delegations. But you five stayed. You faced your fear and chose understanding over panic. And so, you will learn something that the others never will. What is that? Asked the Tolkith representative, its crystalline voice echoing strangely in the chamber. You will learn what humanity actually wants, Marcus said. Not the nightmare scenarios your fear has invented. Not the galactic conquest your histories have taught you to expect from rising powers. The truth. He took a deep breath. Humanity wants three things. First, we want recognition as an equal member of the galactic community. Not subordinates. Not threats. Partners. The delegations stirred, but did not interrupt. Second, we want fair access to trade, resources, and knowledge. The same rights that every other spacefaring species enjoys. No special treatment, no restrictions. Just equality. Marcus's voice grew softer. Third, and most importantly, we want friends. Real friends. Species who will stand beside us, not because they fear us, but because they choose to. Species who see us as we truly are, not as the monsters their fears have created. Vexter stepped forward, his shell finally still. After everything we have done, after this trial, these accusations, the threats of destruction, you want friendship? Yes, Marcus said simply. Because that is who we are. Humans hold grudges against those who harm us, but we also forgive those who act from fear. You were afraid of something you did not understand. You lashed out because you thought it would protect you. We have done the same countless times in our own history. He looked directly at Vexter. This trial was never going to destroy humanity. If you had found us guilty, if you had sent fleets against Earth, we would have fought. We would have died, many of us. But we would have won eventually, because that is what persistent predators do. We keep coming until we succeed or cease to exist. Marcus shook his head. But I do not want that future. I do not want war with the galaxy. I want my species to grow old and wise alongside yours. I want human children to play with Scythian children, and Victari children, and Marathi children. I want us to build something together that none of us could build alone. His voice cracked slightly. I have spent my entire life trying to understand others, trying to find the common ground between people who think they are enemies. And I have learned something that I want to share with all of you. What is that? Kiravel asked softly. Fear is a cage, Marcus said. It traps us in patterns of violence and suspicion. It makes us see enemies where there are only strangers. It turns potential friends into threats. He spread his hands. The species who fled this station are still in that cage. But you do not have to be. He walked toward Vexer and stopped directly in front of the prosecutor's platform. Then he did something that no one expected. Marcus Cole knelt. The chamber gasped. The human who had made everyone tremble with his stillness. The predator who had sent 7 species running in terror was kneeling before the being who had tried to destroy his people. Prosecutor Vexter, Marcus said, I ask you not for mercy. I ask you not for forgiveness. I ask you for the chance to prove that humanity can be trusted. Let us show you who we really are, not through words or promises, but through actions. Through years of peaceful cooperation, through friendship built on mutual respect. Vexter stared down at the kneeling human. His mandibles clicked slowly, but not with fear, with something else. Something that might have been wonder. Why? Vexter whispered. Why would you kneel to me after everything? Marcus looked up and smiled. Because the strongest thing a predator can do is choose not to hunt, he said. Because true power is not about making others fear you. It is about making them believe in you. He rose to his feet and offered his hand to Vexter. Will you give humanity a chance? For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, Vexter reached down and took the human's hand in his own clawed grip. The prosecutor said, his voice rough with emotion. I will. The chamber erupted in applause. Kiravel found herself crying openly, tears streaming down her blue face. Even the emotionless Tolkith seemed moved. their crystal bodies humming with a frequency that might have been joy. Later, after the tribunal had officially dropped all charges, after 3 species had requested immediate alliance talks, after Marcus had shaken hands with every delegate who approached him, Kiravel found him standing alone by a viewport, looking out at the stars. "Ambassador," she said quietly. He turned and smiled at her. "Please call me Marcus." "Marcus." She stood beside him and looked out at the same stars. "You changed everything today. You turned enemies into friends with nothing but patience and words." "That is all I have ever had," Marcus said. "I am not a soldier or a scientist. I cannot fight or build. I can only talk and listen and wait." "It was enough," Kiravel said. Marcus nodded slowly. "It was enough today. Tomorrow, there will be new challenges, new fears to overcome, new bridges to build." He glanced at her. "Will your people help us?" Kiravel felt something warm bloom in her chest. Hope, she realized. Real hope for the future. "Yes," she said. "We will." Marcus smiled and turned back to the stars. Out there somewhere, the 7 species who had fled were still running, still afraid, still trapped in cages of their own making. But here in this moment, 5 species had chosen a different path. They had chosen to stay, to listen, to try. And that, Marcus knew, was how galaxies changed. Not through conquest or war, but through the simple, patient act of reaching out to someone different and saying 3 words. "Let us talk."